have a funny story.
What happened?
So Friday, the Red Sox open up their series against the Tampa Bay Rays. And I get there. They let the media in at 3. So I get there. There's no one on the field. No one's taking BP. And there's no one in the dugout. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? And I was like, the weather. It's about to rain. And I look at my weather app. It's like, oh, it's about to rain a lot, it looks like. So I seek shelter in the Red Sox dugout. I'm just sitting there, mind my own business, by myself. And it starts to rain. And then Tommy Pham walks up the stairs and comes into the dugout, just sits down next to me. And he's on his phone. And he's he's looking at his fantasy football lineup.
Oh, God.
And in my head, I'm like, don't ask him about fantasy football. Do not ask him about fantasy football. So then I'm sitting there and rain comes down harder and harder. And I'm like, is that your fantasy football team?
Oh, my God. Jared, Jesus Christ. You're like a 5-year-old. Don't say it. You couldn't contain it.
So then it starts thundering, and then it starts lightning. There's fucking lightning bolts all over the place. The loudest thunder that I've ever heard. And it's going on for an hour and a half. Like in my mind, like he played baseball in Tampa. So like he's used to like thunderstorms like this. In my mind, this is like a top 3 thunderstorm I've ever experienced in my entire life. Like it looked like a fucking hurricane was about to roll through Fenway. So I'm sitting there and we start talking about fantasy football. And I was like, so what was the deal with that?
Oh my.
So he's like, all right.
Was there
Was
there any aggression? Did you feel like when you brought it up, there was like why the fuck is he bringing this shit up?
We're like boys. No, like the first day that he was a Red Sox at Fenway, Plawecki introduced us, and then he followed me on Twitter after. And every time that I've seen him at Fenway, he like comes over, like daps me up, and we're cool. So I mean, like he could have popped up into the dugout and been like, "Oh, only Jared's here." Like I'm going back down, but he came up and sat down, and he's just chilling. So I was like, "All right, yeah, me and Tommy Pham are boys now." So the subject of the fantasy football league comes up, and it's one of those, like when I used to do the Sirius XM radio show with KFC, I used to tell stories that happened in my life. And immediately there would be Reddit threads and people tweeting at me being like, oh, Jared's just making up some shit again. Like there's no way that happened. And this feels like one of those stories because like the Tommy Pham like fantasy football story is like now it's one of the most infamous happenings in baseball history. So now I'm hearing it firsthand from the guy, from Tommy. And the crazy element of this is that as he's telling me the story of the fantasy football league, it's like a fucking Disney movie where like the skies darken and it's like boom, 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 boom.
I would have been shitting bricks.
And fucking lightning is striking all over the place and like the loudest thunderclaps that you've ever heard as Tommy Pham is telling me the story from his point of view of the fantasy football league that led to all the drama this season. It was fucking bonkers. Like the story itself wasn't bonkers, but the set of circumstances around it was insane. Like in the middle, and he did not flinch. Like when I tell you that these are some of the loudest thunderclaps I've ever heard in my entire life, and like lightning looks like it's fucking striking Fenway Park, he never blinked. So like I'm looking at him to show him the respect of like, I'm looking at you in the eye while you're telling me this story. Well, meanwhile, to my right, fucking the largest hurricane type thunderstorm is going on over here. And he did not fucking miss a beat with this story. Like he did not stop telling the story. And like, no matter how loud it was, he wasn't like, oh shit. Anyway, so like there were like the thunder was so loud that there were parts of the story that I couldn't hear what he was saying. And he was directly in front of me and he still never stopped from the thunderstorm. So It's crazy. One of the craziest things that's ever happened in my life.
During this entire conversation, nobody else enters the dugout. It is solely just you two.
One other person entered the dugout, and it was just one of the clubbies. That was it.
Holy shit.
So it was me and Tommy. It was me, Tommy, and the clubby. That was it. Yeah.
So did you, when you heard the story from him?
Team Tommy. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was bullshit. Yeah. Like, long story short, like I won't like bore people with the details because it's not like that. Like, it's not like that. I don't want to say not interesting, but like, it's not like that. Like, holy shit, I can't believe it. But it was more along the lines of like, they had a set of rules at the beginning of the year, and he drafted his team based on the rules. And then he was kicking everyone's ass because he drafted his team based on what the rules were. And then everyone was like, how is his team so good? And then they started doing research on the rules of other leagues. And we're like, oh, we have to adjust our rules. And then he was like, well, like, I drafted my team for this set of rules. So like, if we're going to change the rules, then like, let's do a redraft. And then they were like, no. So they changed the rules so that his team wasn't based on the original rules. Like, it was, yeah, I'd slap somebody over that. That's bullshit.
So you're telling me if Jock Peterson walked up to you right now, you'd smack him for Tommy Pham?
I don't know that I mean, like, if Tommy was there, yes. But I don't think I would just walk up to him like at a restaurant. But if Tommy was like, hey, this guy, we need to double down on that slap, I'd be like, say less.
Wow. You hear that, Jock?
Yeah. I mean, it was something. It was like, I hope that the people listening or watching on the YouTube channel closed their eyes and pictured that scene, because it was like a scene out of a Disney movie when like the villain is like going on this like, you know, villainous rant, but then the clouds darken and the lightning starts striking. It was like that. Like, when he started to tell the story, that's when all hell started to break loose in the skies. So what an experience. I'll tell that story to my grandkids someday when they discover. They'll be like, yeah, like, that's crazy. You know, I'm a big Red Sox fan now, and I'm starting to get into the history. And like, did you see this thing about Tommy Pham? I'd be like, let me tell you something about Tommy Pham and that fantasy football league.
First off, I love how your grandchildren are introducing themselves to you at some point, just about how their entire Red Sox fandom. No clue that Jared Carrabis was once, you know, leading Red Sox Nation.
By that point, I'll like literally be like living in the fucking woods of New Hampshire. So like,
but so he tells you this story of a lifetime, controlling the weather all on his own, basically being Thor, the way I'm hearing this. And then he goes 2 for 4.
Yeah.
Pretty fucking badass, if you ask me.
Yeah. No, he's a bad dude. He's a special cat. And that was just one of those stories that I feel like if I told that on radio, people would be like, bullshit. Like, you're making it like you're making that up. Not making it. I swear on my mother's life, that's what happened.
Listen, you can check the receipts. You told that initial story when you met Tommy Pham on this podcast.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's there.
Yeah. And now, I mean, there are people to corroborate the story. I mean, there was a clubby there. Mm-hmm.
Was that the scariest question you've ever asked a player?
No, because I feel like it was one of those things where trying to think of like the perfect example, but like, obviously he knows that everyone knows that story. And I'm sure he hasn't had the opportunity to just be like, here's what happened. Like, here's why I was so pissed about it. And so it's like, you're almost waiting to be asked so that you can tell your side. So I think it was there. It's like, because when it came up, he was like, all right, here's what happened. Like, here's the whole story. We're like, okay, cool.
I'd love for us to have him on during the off season to see if the weather thing happens again.
I think he would do it. Yeah. I think he would do it. Yeah, I mean, it was it was just quite an experience.
Thank you for risking your life.
Yeah, I mean, it was there was one point like he went back into the clubhouse, and Colin, he's the clubby, went back down into the clubhouse. So I was in the dugout by myself during like I say top 3, but I can't think of any thunderstorm that I've seen that was worse than that. I mean, I'm not usually outside in thunderstorms, but in terms of like the sustainability, how long it was that loud and that many lightning strikes, it might be number 1. And to have been where I was with who I was with during it, I'll never forget it for the rest of my life.
Put in the book.
Yeah, book number 2. Yeah, book number 2, the Tommy Pham saga. Yeah, good times.